On this episode of Jeffito's movie blog, I review the movie Dunkirk, the latest from director Christopher Nolan. Now that I'm actually awake and well rested, let's get into it. We're starting right now. Welcome back to Jeffito's movie blog. I'm Jeff Malicki, and if you love movies as much as I do, I humbly ask that you subscribe to my channel. I try to cover all the latest movie news, I do movie reviews, trailer reaction videos, box office predictions. I even play along with the movie trivia schmodown from Collider Video 2 times a week. Check that out, that's a lot of fun. Basically, I just love talking movies, and I want to talk about movies with you, so hit that subscribe button and then click that little bell notification icon so you don't miss anything. In May 1940, Germany advanced into France, trapping Allied troops on the beaches of Dunkirk. Under air and ground cover from British and French forces, troops were slowly and methodically evacuated from the beach using every serviceable naval and civilian vessel that could be found. At the end of this heroic mission, 330,000 French, British, Belgian, and Dutch soldiers were safely evacuated. Dunkirk stars people like Mark Rylance, Tom Hardy, Kenneth Branagh, Cillian Murphy, Harry Styles, as well as hundreds of extras. It is rated PG-13 for intense war experience and some language. So Dunkirk tells the true story during World War II of the Battle of Dunkirk in France, where 400,000 men are surrounded. They're surrounded and trapped on a beach, the enemy's closing in, and they are trying desperately to escape and to try to get home when all hope seems lost. The movie is directed by Christopher Nolan. He's the director of Memento, Inception, the Dark Knight trilogy, and Interstellar, among others, and when news first broke that he was going to do a war movie, people were freaking out about how potentially awesome it was going to be. Does it live up to the hype? I'm here to tell you this movie is fantastic. The dogfights in the air between Tom Hardy as the British Air Force pilot protecting the boats from enemy bombers are some of the best scenes in the movie, and some of the best or most engaging dogfights that I've seen on film in quite some time. And I love the fact that Christopher Nolan used real planes, real boats, real locations, and an insane amount of real extras to really immerse you into this film. I feel like a lot of other filmmakers would have cheaped out and relied too heavily on green screen and digital effects, but with Nolan going with practical effects, it just added a sense of realism and a sense of urgency to the film that I don't think you would have gotten if you made this movie on a soundstage with green screens. I really appreciated that, and it helps to make the movie timeless. Again, it just helps to immerse you in the situation, and you feel the urgency of these groups of people just trying and doing everything they can to survive against the enemy despite being surrounded. It feels real. It feels authentic. It feels like you're there in this impossible situation. Whether you're on the ground with Harry Styles, whether you're on a boat with Mark Rylance, or whether you're up in the air with Tom Hardy, it just feels so real. It feels like you're there, and I loved it. There isn't a whole lot of dialogue in the film, and yet it works wonderfully. Because if you were actually in this situation, you wouldn't be sitting around making small talk with the guy next to you. You wouldn't be sitting around making small talk like, "Hey, I'm Bobby. I got a great game back home, and I miss you so." And the guy next to him wouldn't be like, "I'm Johnny, and I miss my wife and kids. When I get home, we're gonna have a grand old time and go to the fair and get a hot dog while riding the carousel." You wouldn't do that. And you see that in so many war films. But not this one. The movie is solely based around the situation. It's about the emotion of what someone is feeling at the moment in war. It is solely about the event, and it isn't necessarily about the characters. This is perhaps the most realistic and engaging war film this side of Saving Private Ryan. It doesn't glorify war. It isn't your typical Hollywood war movie. When things explode, they explode realistically and not in some grand Hollywood spectacle. The gunshots aren't your normal Hollywood gunshots. It just feels so realistic and engrossing and so immersive. And the cinematography is fantastic. This is a gorgeous looking piece of film. The sound design, sound editing, and sound mixing in this movie is absolutely phenomenal. This is one of the best sounding movies. So detailed, so nuanced, so perfectly balanced that I've seen in quite a while. And also, Hans Zimmer's score really highlights the film and accents the film just wonderfully. It's woven into the very fabric of the film. If I had to have a negative about the movie, and the more I think about it, it isn't really a negative, But I was going to say that I wish that there was a little bit more character development. The film follows these three groups of characters, but I think the film, while already being fantastic, could have been taken to the next level if we got more character development. There's no backstory. You never really connect with any single one character. It's just not a performance-based movie. And that's why I didn't really talk about any of the individual actors and their individual performances like I normally do here in my reviews. They are all great. They all do a good job, but none of them really get a chance to shine or to cut through because that isn't what Christopher Nolan was going for here. He was trying to focus more on the event. It is about the evacuation of 400,000 men. It is about the situation rather than the characters, so I can't really fault the film too much. And while that may be my biggest gripe, as I'm thinking about it and as I'm speaking this, I really shouldn't even bring it up, because it isn't a huge detriment because you're still able to resonate with the characters enough and you do understand perfectly the situation at hand and what they're trying to go through in order to try to survive. Again, the movie isn't following any one character on their journey. This movie plucks you out of the comfort of your seat in the theater and drops you into the middle of hell on earth in war. You feel like you're right there. You feel as if you're right there with these actors on screen. So, while yeah, it might have been nice to see more character development, and while it could be negative that there isn't more dialogue or more character development or background or knowing their history, whatever, it does not detract from the movie at all because that isn't the story that Nolan was telling here. It's rather unique in that way, and it works. Another potential negative might be the way that Nolan uses three different timelines to tell the story before they all converge. You have the people on the beach, and their story is told from a week out. And the story of the boats from back home, which is told from a day out. And then there's the story being told in the air, which is told from an hour out. And when Nolan jumps from perspective to perspective, sometimes it takes you a minute to think, okay, where are we at? When does this take place? It was just daytime over there, and now it's night, and I'm a little confused. So you do kind of have to pay a little closer attention to that. It was a deliberate way of editing the film and telling the story, and I think it worked really well for the most part. But I can see where some audiences might not catch on to that storytelling device as quickly, and could be a little confused on their first viewing. But again, despite being unconventional, I thought it worked. The movie is relatively short, clocking in at around an hour 47 minutes or whatever it is. And I know that some people were disappointed when that runtime was revealed. But you know something? This movie is the perfect length. It didn't need to be any longer than what it was. It didn't need to be this sprawling 2.5-hour epic. A movie should only be as long as it needs to be. It doesn't need to be padded with filler just so it can be 2 hours or 2.5 hours or whatever. This movie, there's no fluff. There's no filler. There's no point where you're thinking to yourself, come on, let's get back to the story, let's get on with it. This movie was the perfect length, and had it been longer, it may have suffered and not been as engaging as it was. There really isn't a wasted moment in this movie. So again, kudos to Christopher Nolan for knowing what he wanted out of the film and telling it in the perfect amount of time. There is never a dull moment in this film. From the first shot, you are in it. There's no setup, there's no preamble, there isn't any introduction to speak of. There's not even really any downtime. It just hooks you in and pulls you in and does not let go until the very end. The movie is rated PG-13, and when it first received that rating, a lot of people were a little bit disappointed because they felt like you couldn't properly tell a war film and have it be gritty and realistic without the hard R rating. They felt it was going to be too watered down, or too Disney-fied, as if the only way that you can tell a war film is by showing people getting their brains blown out and limbs flying every which way. But this film didn't need to be hard R. There's still plenty of gunshots and bombs and explosions, and you feel the incredible impact of the war. It's still incredibly intense. It is still very violent, but without the blood, guts, and gore. I don't think it necessarily needed to show that, and because of that, the film is able to reach a wider audience, one that may have passed up the movie if it was more graphic, and I think that's a good thing. This is a very important film. It's a story that needs to be told, and I'll be honest, until I heard that Nolan was doing this film, I'm not even sure if I had even heard the story of Dunkirk. Maybe it's because we're here in America, and this is a British and French battle against the Germans before American involvement in World War II, but I don't think I've ever heard of this. and that highlights one of the problems that I have with how history is taught in school. They are so focused on names and dates and places to the detriment of learning about and remembering the story. The very word history is his story. The important thing is the story. Instead, it's all based on memorization rather than learning the lesson and becoming engrossed in the story. Anyway, I could go on a huge rant about history and how I feel the way that it's taught in school is a huge disservice to future generations, but that's a different video for a different time. Suffice to say, I'm ashamed that until recently I didn't even know about this story, and it's something that I feel is really important. Back to the movie itself, go out and see it. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I thought it was fantastic. I'm going to give Dunkirk a 4.5 out of 5. This is definitely one to go see in theaters, preferably on the biggest screen possible with the best sound system possible. We don't have an IMAX screen at the theater that I work at, but I do hear that's the way to see it if you have one available near you. The film is also being shown on 70mm film in a few theaters, and it would be nice to see it that way as well. I know that a few coworkers and their friends saw it at a different theater in that format, and they enjoyed that experience. I saw it with a very good friend and coworker of mine and her mother. We were the only 3 in the theater at 10:45 at night. Maybe not the optimal viewing experience because sometimes it's better to see movies with crowds or of other people, but all 3 of us really loved the film. In fact, right as the credits were starting to roll, Anna leaned over to me and said that she wanted to see it again. At 1 o'clock in the morning. But however you see it, the important thing is just go out and see this film. It's not the type of movie where you go and grab a large popcorn, hang out with friends, and have a grand old time. And because it's Christopher Nolan, I think maybe some younger people might be expecting that, given the other films that he's done in the past. And they might be a little bit disappointed if that's what they're going in for. Dunkirk is a much more cinematic experience. That's what it is. It's an experience. It's wonderful, it's important, and it's really well done. Congratulations, Christopher Nolan, on this incredible war film. So those are my thoughts on Dunkirk. Have you seen it yet? If so, what did you think? Where does Dunkirk rank in your favorite Christopher Nolan films, and where does it rank in your favorite war films of all time? Sound off in the comment section down below. Thank you so much as always for watching. You are the best. Make sure that you're subscribed to my channel for more videos this weekend talking about all the movie news and new trailers coming out of San Diego Comic-Con. Until next time, I will see you at the movies. Bye-bye.